We have a draft equity framework actually already developed. We're gonna come to the board with that in October. We're rolling out V2. And we just got a grant from the state to increase or expand our dual enrollment opportunities. So that will be a big focus for this school year. So happy to take any comments or questions from you all on professional learning curriculum.
Questions from board members? Mr. DeYoung?
Thank you. Thanks, Dr. Kutaya. I'm really excited that this continues to move forward, and the board has, supported it with funding through the budget process. I was happy to be able to go to the first round of HQI Live way back, what year was it? Do you remember?
2019.
2019. And it seems like it's progressed quite dramatically up until this point. I wonder if, a couple things. One is, have you had people, I know you've had people who have gone from being part of the experience of HQI Live to being facilitators. I know that process has happened. What about people, have people from that first season continued to take it over the course of the last few seasons that you've done?
Yeah, so at a certain, I address the crowd every day at a certain point. And one of the days I asked for a show of hands, who's been here season 1, 2, 3, 4. So we do have individuals that have come every year. Remember, there are only 28 in season 1.
Right.
So that number will grow for repeat visitors. So there's a certain buzz about it. And we kind of create some hype, like with Amy Rizzo's help before she took on the principalship. She and IT were creating little like promo videos and teasers and reminders, sign up, and as soon as you signed up, you got a cute like little travel voucher, you're on your way to HQI, like we try to create some buzz around it, and teachers are our best salespeople on it. We were at Foreign, Steve and I, and they shared the dates for next year already. We were at one school, East Shore, and Shannon put it out there and said, okay guys, so take out your calendars and block it out, that's a week you can't take vacation, like haha, LOL. But that's, like there's some schools that are well represented some years, and other years it's just, I'm thinking about Mathewson, one year had, I think like 12 people there, and this year they had 4. So I think it just depends on what the need is, what people's schedules are. It's the same week every year. We try to keep consistent with that. And I think it's just something that it has become part of our culture, that we can expect HQI Live, 3rd week of July. And if you're not catching it in July, we've been asked, can you do like something in August? And it's hard to get people in August. So that's why we have lab sites throughout the school year, or variation. Not everyone uses that phrase. But we have opportunities for teachers to go into one another's room and do like mini HQI Live. So there are other opportunities for teachers to experience watching teachers teach and deconstructing and talking about instructional moves, instructional practice.
Okay. Do you have a sense, I know you said that you've heard different numbers as far as how many people were there this year. Do you have a sense as to, even a ballpark number as far as number of staff, teachers that have had exposure to HQI Live?
I need to get that number. I'll see if we can do some research and see if we can find a way to come up with a number that's not duplicative.
Okay.
I think you asked me this last year.
Probably.
I think it was different. You said, well, how long is it gonna take you to get all teachers, right? I think that was the question last year. So this is a creative, different way to ask, thank you. So Ms. Griffin, if we can make note, let's see if we can find a way to go through the rosters from the 4 years and see what the non-duplicative number is.
That would be great. And I just have one other question, because I saw the video cameras. One of the pictures has a video camera in the back.
I meant to say something about that, thank you.
If you want to say what you were going to say.
I think we engage almost your entire team. In fact, one of your team members, Mr. Giancola, came to me and started talking about formative assessment. So even our IT department is talking HQI. So we record, with everybody's permission, everyone knows this is what we do since year one. We've been doing it 4 years. We record the mini lessons that the facilitators give the morning of 1 through 5, days 1 through 5. We record when teachers teach kids. We record the Q&A debrief between teacher and teacher. And then on Thursday, we have a beautifully inspiring and thoughtful interview with kids. And we ask them on Thursday, so how did this go for you? And there's always just great feedback from kiddos. So we record that, and then we record all, if not, most if not all of day 0. And the reason why we do that is we actually use, and it's mainly Dr. Nobley who sits and views them all night long and pulls out, these are great clips. Dr. Nobley's with us tonight. This would be a great clip if we want to look at questioning techniques. And now all of a sudden we have like a directory of examples on video of HQI. We also, Dr. Nobley also catalogs comments from kids that point to development of agency, or teachers demonstrating opportunities of growth through the DRF. Like, so we have great resource, our own resource catalog to say, so what could that look like? What is the feedback from teachers and kids? And so we, our schools and departments have access to that throughout the year.
That's great. All right, thank you.
Ms. Zerby?
Hi, Dr. Kataya, sorry.
Hi, Ms. Derby.
How are you? I was wondering if you could tell me how your One Day for Day One event went, and also if the staff members that attend that event overlap with the ones that also go to the HQI.
So I might lean on Ms. Capazza a little bit to help me with this, but I was away for the One Day for Day One, so I couldn't attend. But we chose to do something different this year. We were getting really big, and we were using a venue that, for a couple reasons, wasn't meeting our needs. And so we decided to go to the Beardsley Zoo. And I looked through the exit slips to review, like, so that at work, and outstanding reviews. Like, people felt so valued. I remember the word valued often in the exit slips. People felt like they were part of a community. They were respected as learners because they were given choice on what they wanted to do, which could have been something as light as, was there something with monkeys or something? I heard some monkey stories in there.
Prairie dogs,
Yeah, prairie dogs, thank you, Ms. Griffin, yeah. So you could go and take a class on the prairie dogs, or you could, there was a class, I think, on how to better engage and communicate with families. So we had teachery kind of things, and then we had self-care kind of, there was a yoga class. I don't know, was there, there was a drumming. So we tried to like provide lots of different experiences depending on what adults needed. And it's open to any staff member. You don't have to be a certified teacher. And we require all of our new to Milford teachers to attend,
It was about a third new teachers, 2/3
regular staff.
existing staff, if you will, yeah. And it
So-
was wonderful, it was great,
It was good.
amazing.
What
Just
made it so
amazing.
amazing?
Well, just, you guys were there too, right? Just the vibe. I mean, you picked which classes you wanted to go to, and so you saw a different group of people at each session you went to. So you got to really, and a lot of them were small and interactive, so you got to know people really well. I don't know, and the new teachers just are, they've never been exposed to anything like it. They rave about it. They,
I bumped
you
into
know.
a new teacher today. She introduced herself to me. Well, we knew each other in Fairfield, and she came and she says, I have to tell you that one day for day one, I went home and told my family, I feel like I'm in a school district who cares about me. That's good feedback.
Yeah. And because it was outdoors, it was so different, and I think everybody really liked that aspect of it. You
Yeah.
know, not being closed up indoors, going room to room, that's pretty standard, right?
So we've talked about different venues, maybe an aquarium or a museum or a state park, and kind of changing it up year to year, on moving away from like a country club feel, so. And I don't know the answer to your second part, as
The
to whether
overlap?
there's overlap. They're distinctly different, and one is very, teaching, learning focused, and one day for day one is self-care. Select something that's gonna help you get in a good place to jumpstart the year.
Thank you.
If you want me to let board members know when next year's date is,
Ms. Whiten?
Thank you. First of all, I want to say thank you for that amazing presentation, and I loved your enthusiasm, right? I think we could all feel how excited you were. And gosh, right? I mean, that's the kind of leader we need, and how lucky that we have one, right? And hopefully everyone is coming in this week equally excited. I'm thrilled to hear that in October, we're gonna have a presentation on the equity framework, because that was gonna be a question I was gonna ask about. But I'm just wondering for tonight, if you could just briefly talk just a little bit more about the idea of these thinking classrooms and making thinking visible, and what that's all about.
Since you're here, is it
Oh,
okay if I bounce it
there you
over to
go.
Dr.
Yay,
Noble?
yes,
Bring 'em up.
absolutely.
That's why you came, right?
Yeah, just to,
Come on over.
sure. So, I mean, Dr. Katai talked a little bit about it. So, one of the anchor texts that we used was Building Thinking Classrooms by Peter Lillidahl. So, and it meshes really nicely with our model for HQI. And so one of the things that we want to really zoom in on is what is the thinking that we're asking kids to do every day, every period, and making sure that that is the type of thinking that we have outlined in our vision of the learner, and that we're really pushing kids to really engage cognitively as much as possible. And so the making thinking visible piece comes into play in regards to formative assessment, because as Dr. Katai said, what we want to be able to do is shorten make the response time as short as possible between getting information, feedback from the students. We tend to think about feedback sometimes as teachers as, we give the feedback, but we're trying to flip the script a little bit here and say, no, actually we're getting a tremendous amount of feedback from kids, like every second of the day that they're in a class. So how do we get that feedback? How do we know what a kid is thinking so that we can make the response to that thinking as a teacher, whatever that might be, whether it's asking a question, pointing them to work with another group, suggesting a resource, whatever it is, as short as possible. Because the research tells us that if you can make that cycle as tight as possible, then learning is going to be the most powerful. So we're really looking at how can we support teachers to plan for that so that they don't have to make all these. There is obviously some in the moment decision making, as Dr. Kai alluded to, but if you can go in knowing what's the thinking I want kids to do, how am I going to know that they're doing that thinking? How am I going to make that visible? And then what are some potential responses I might have depending on what that is? That allows you to make those decisions more fluidly in the moment. So we're doing a lot of work with that'll be a lot of the work this year as well. So yeah, a lot of, so kind of taking some of the work from the book and HQI and really bringing it together, Milfordizing it is a verb we use a lot. We don't just take anything as is, but that's a lot of the work that we'll be doing and supporting teachers with this year. So that answered enough of your question.
It's somewhat, I guess I mean, that was a great answer, thank you so much, and very informative, but I guess I'm interested in, and I'm not sure if I'm gonna say this correctly or not, but the idea of like how for a student, right, how a thinking classroom is different from one that might be stressing memorization, right? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think I will you to think back to some of your classroom experiences or any of that we've been in, and sometimes the teacher is working. We want the teacher to work really hard, but not in the classroom when they're teaching. We want them to work really hard in preparing the lesson and what they're doing after the lesson. But the people that should be working the hardest during the lesson are the actual students in the room. So sometimes, right, we're all teachers, we wanna help, we want kids to learn things. We can do a lot of the thinking and sometimes take some of that opportunity away from kids, so we're really trying to work with teachers to think about how can we make sure that kids are the ones that are being asked to do the heavy lifting during instruction. So what kinds of tasks are we asking them to do? Like, what are we putting in front of kids? How are we asking them to work? Is it individual? Is it with groups? Do they have to look at somebody else's thinking and make sense of that? How does that relate to their thinking? So just opportunities to really think both individually and collectively, make sense of their thinking, make sense of other people's thinking, right? Sometimes the kids are working independently, they might not ever see what their classmates are doing. But one of the things that is really useful for students about making thinking visible is I can see what another person is doing, and that might allow for what we call some mobilization of knowledge. I might be able to get something from that, I might be able to go talk to that student and say, well, tell me about what you're doing with that. That could actually make me rethink what I'm doing, right? So we're trying to create an environment where thinking is valued, where it's visible, whether there's great discourse around it. And so we're trying to see, not that that wasn't happening, but how can we optimize that so that's happening all the time for every kid, during their time in school. So taking a look at how can we work to do that together.
Thank you.
We still have memorization of facts, so don't want that to float out there.
Yes.
We still believe in multiplication tables and spelling.
Mr. Pelichetti?
Dr. Katai, just a quick question. Back in the winter, Dr. Fedigan had mentioned that the district was going to take part in Confertute, did you?
We did. I just don't know who.
But we took part.
We
The district,
did.
yeah.
I'm gonna answer that in writing to you guys, yes. I just wanna confirm, Confertute, it's the UConn's gifted
Talented and
and
gifted
talented
PD, yeah.
conference. I'm stumbling because I think there was conversation about, should we do virtual, should we send people, for how many days, so let me confirm all that and.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from board members? All right, thank you so much. That was a
Thank
great
you.
presentation.
So happy to move on to a second reading of board policies, requesting approval this evening. If we could go to 3520.13, student data protection and privacy, cloud-based issues.
Just a reminder, board members, this is the second reading of these policies, and I think there were just a few minor edits that were requested when we looked at them for the first reading.
Nothing related to content. If you look at page 4, there's a strikeout in the first full paragraph. And that's it for that policy.
There was down
Sorry.
below, there was one other, changing Milford Board of Education to the district.
What page, please?
That's the
Oh, I
same-
see,
the
I
same
see. It
page,
was just so
yeah.
faint,
And
sorry.
that was it, I think. So do we have a motion, Mr. Fowler?
I do. I make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves board policy 3520.13, student data protection and privacy / cloud-based issues as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. DeYoung has seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, can we have a roll call vote?
Adam DeYoung,
Yes.
Catherine Ailing,
Yes.
Megan Doyle,
Yes.
Andrew Fowler,
Yes.
Tracy Irby,
Yes.
Emily McDonough Souza,
Yes.
Gary Pellicetti,
Yes.
Luna Petrowski's not here, Cindy Wolf Boynton,
Yes.
Susan Glennon.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you, board members.
We'll move on to 6163.32. It's a new policy on service animals in the classroom. I don't believe there was any feedback, and the policy stands as you read it the first time.
Great, there were no requested changes. Mr. Fowler?
I make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves board policy 6163.32, service animals in the classroom as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Pelichetti, second. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote?
Adam DeYoung,
Yes.
Catherine Ailing,
Yes.
Megan Doyle,
Yes.
Andrew Fowler,
Yes.
Tracy Irby,
Yes.
Emily McDonough Souza,
Yes.
Gary Pellicetti,
Yes.
Una Petrowski's not here, Cindy Wolf Boynton,
Yes.
and Susan Glennon.
Yes,
Motion passes 9-0.
thank you.
Thank you, board members, and finally, not finally, almost finally, on 6164.12, new policy on acquired immune deficiency syndrome, we made one edit in the first line, age-appropriate education is added.
Mr. Fowler?
I make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves board policy 6164.12, exemption from AIDS instruction as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. DeYoung has seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, roll call vote, please.
Adam DeYoung,
Yes.
Catherine Ailing,
Yes.
Megan Doyle,
Yes.
Andrew Fowler,
Yes.
Tracy Irby,
Yes.
Emily McDonough Souza,
Yes.
Gary Pellicetti,
Yes.
Una Petrowski's not here, Cindy Wolf Boynton,
Yes.
and Susan Glennon.
Yes,
Motion passes 9-0.
thank you.
Thank you, board members, and finally, policy 6174 on summer school, we made an edit in the first line to spell out Milford Public Schools.
Mr. Fowler?
I make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves board policy 6174, summer school as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Ms. Wolf Boynton, seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, roll call vote.
Adam DeYoung,
Yes.
Catherine Ailing,
Yes.
Megan Doyle,
Yes.
Andrew Fowler,
Yes.
Tracy Irby,
Yes.
Emily McDonough Souza,
Yes.
Gary Pellicetti,
Yes.
Una Petrowski's not here, Cindy Wolf Boynton,
Yes.
and Susan Glennon.
Yes,
Motion passes 9-0.
thank you.
Board members, if we could move to new policies to consider, first read this evening. If we could bring your attention to 6145.2, extracurricular activities. So, the thinking behind the revision here, just to share our why, is, one, we want to be in better alignment with the CIAC guidelines. They make this recommendation in their handbook for eligibility for playing sports. Second, we're finding that we really want to provide access to our students, to these extracurricular activities, despite a possible having less than a C. That we believe if students are earning credits toward graduation, we should allow them access to extracurricular activities. A couple pieces behind that, I think this kind of shows at least the evolution of my thinking a little bit over a career of 32 years. I think now more than ever, kids need access to things that interest them, things that might be their passion. And I think that there's a strong relationship with what they can do after school and with things that they love to their success in school. And I think it's reciprocal. Limiting access to sports to kids who are not making anything higher than a C, I think actually might be hurting some of our kiddos. That limitation access, I think, we might be seeing manifesting in either behaviors or not really motivation to academically achieve. So you'll see the strikeout of the paragraph that we don't want to include any longer on page 2, where it starts with a student must receive a cumulative average of not less than a C with no more than 1 F. So we're taking the language in this paragraph, which I'll read aloud from the CIAC handbook for eligibility. Eligibility for fall sports is determined by the number of credits received toward graduation at the close of the previous school year, not the fourth marking period grades. You must have received credit in at least 4 Carnegie units of work for which you did not previously receive credit to be eligible for fall sports participation. This may include credits earned during the summer. Thereafter, marking periods, not semester grades, are used to determine eligibility. You must take and earn passing grades in at least 4 quarter Carnegie units and meet the academic requirements of your school to achieve eligibility. First-time ninth grade students will automatically be eligible for first marking period. So we're basing it on quarters, we're basing it on earning credits toward graduation, which is the goal, and we're wanting to increase and encourage participation. Now, before you ask, it only applies to sports. We decided as a high school team that we would not include just extracurricular clubs because there was an inconsistency of applying this policy to clubs. And we're finding that a lot of kids who are struggling in the classroom are really thriving in clubs, and that's where they're finding their place of belonging. So we wouldn't not want to limit access to clubs. So this is the proposal in front of you. I'm sure you'll have questions and wonderings, and I'm happy to provide additional information. And if we don't have answers here at this table, we could certainly provide it for you before you vote at our next meeting.
Questions from board members? Mr. DeYoung?
Thank you. Can you clarify what you just said about clubs? I'm not quite sure I understand. So
So this policy won't apply to clubs. It strictly will apply to sports.
just this paragraph here, right? Because-
Eligibility.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if a student were, how is eligibility determined for clubs at this point? Or
It
grades
is
aren't taken into account at all?
not, it is loosely.
I
Right.
believe it's,
I think it's inconsistent
Okay.
and in some cases not used at all.
So what is the intent? I mean, what is the district's, what would the district's position be on clubs? That,
I would want any student to access a club.
so should we codify that?
That there is no, well, the absence of that language speaks to that. That we're only
Okay.
applying an eligibility rule for participating in sports.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Mr. DeYoung?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
What is a Carnegie unit?
It's the credit that you receive toward graduation.
Can we maybe find that someplace? And I had a question on the last piece of the full paragraph that's in red. So it says, you must take and earn passing grades in at least 4 quarter Carnegie units and meet the academic requirements of your school. So I'm wondering what that means, the academic requirements of your school. Should we not have the same requirements throughout the district?
That is a fair edit
And
of the school district.
what, can you explain what that might be as it differs from the Carnegie units?
I'm thinking it could possibly be matriculation of classes across prerequisites. It could also include some of our attendance requirements to fulfill credits. Those are the two that come immediately to
Okay.
mind, Ms. Glennon, but I could talk
You
to
could
our
think
high
of-
school
yeah,
team and get some more.
So I recognize that, you took the language out of the CIAC, guidebook is what you had said. So it's very generic language in terms of that, and probably not that academic because it's a sporting group. But, if you could give some thought to that.
We'll come back with some examples.
On what
Ms.
Ms.
Doyle?
Glennon said, I feel like by adding that second line, the academic requirements, you're kind of backtracking. If we're trying to open the system up to more students and you just have 4 quarters of Carnegie units, and then you have to have academic requirements, academic requirements could be a 2.0. So are we contradicting ourselves by having that second part of language?
So we'll bring to the next meeting clarification to that last sentence and the commonality and differences between the Carnegie unit and academic requirements, because they are both required but not the same. A Carnegie unit is very specifically defined through the state, actually, what is required to fulfill a credit. Bless you. So we'll come back with some examples and clarification.
Okay.
And then it could be the board's decision on whether you change that language or not.
And
Well,
then,
the point you made about like, attendance might be, you know, a consideration, so I guess those are, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
oh,
you.
no, it's fine. The last thing is in the second paragraph, Milford Public Schools MPS Vision of the Learner. We've used mostly the convention of district, not MPS, if we wanna change that.
Second paragraph on what page?
First page, page 1.
Any other questions? Ms. Wolf-Whiten?
I'm just curious, could this change in policy have any kind of negative effect on students who are playing like on a combined team, like the hockey team where don't we have some teams where you have kids from other districts? Or am I hallucinating?
I think this policy will
Girls'
actually
hockey.
open up access.
Yeah,
It won't limit it. Our
okay,
intent is to open up access.
okay. So even when we might be playing with other schools, it's not gonna cause a problem?
No,
You
same
don't-
applies to them,
Okay,
It only applies to our kids, though.
yeah.
right.
And
I
then-
know, I understand that, but it won't affect us not being able to interact and have teams made up of multiple schools, including our students.
I don't see why it would.
No, not if the SEAC is the guiding principle.
Good point, okay.
Any other questions? Mr. DeYoung?
Just one other follow-up. I was wondering, once this passes, hopefully, how do you usually get that information out to, in this case, student athletes? Because it's a relatively significant change.
Through athletic directors and coaches,
Okay, so they'll communicate to the athletes themselves? Okay,
sport counselors.
okay.
Any other questions? Okay, so this will come back next month for a second reading and hopefully adoption.
Along with 6153 on field trips.
Yes.
Okay, so we wanted to tighten up field trips a little bit, because we're starting to get some requests, for more out-of-state travel and even international travel, so we wanted just to revisit the policy. So I'll bring your attention, to the bottom of page 1. We struck that the final approval is not by the building principal, but actually it comes out of, the Assistant Superintendent of Teaching and Learning's office, as delegated by the superintendent. So you'll see that first bullet on page 2, all field trip required is approval by the superintendent or his or her designee. So we just shifted that authority, and had already been our practice actually, that it was coming to the Assistant Superintendent's office. We also wanted to put some timelines in place. The third bullet on page 2 talks about, within the state of Connecticut, making requests, at least 30 days in advance, with costs to be ascertained, out-of-state field trips to be approved by, with at least 60 days in advance. And then all foreign travel field trips must be submitted to the superintendent for approval for, at least 90 days ahead of time. And then parents and guardians are responsible for obtaining trip cancellation insurance that won't be upon the district. District's not responsible for refunding students for canceled trips or to pursue reimbursement from travel agents or trip insurance carriers. The cost of field trips, students may be assessed for the cost of field trips, which includes the following items: transportation, lodging, meals and entry fees. We would allow for fundraising activities following our district policies to defray the cost of the field trip, and when the cost is considerable, a discrete arrangement can be made with the administrator for the possible assistance and payment for those individuals experiencing hardship. Certainly, we want to make sure that kids have access. Some additional considerations: the acceptance of any gratuities, discounts, and/or gifts for personal use resulting from field trips is prohibited. That usually applies to adults that are chaperoning, etc. Any gifts, gratuities, or promotional items provided by travel companies will become the property of the district and will be used for the benefit of the trip or the school. And then finally, on page 3, This disallows the use of private vehicles to and from field trips. The determination of bona fide emergency is made by the principal and/or his designee. We had that situation actually in June, when the Canada fires came. We were trying to figure out how to get kids home, and remember the smoke descended upon us. We had some field trips out, so that is an example of a bona fide emergency. And that those who are using their cars are the risk is being legally liable for any injury a student sustains while in the vehicle. And then we made a change to the second bullet, that all trips are properly supervised and all safety precautions are observed. Happy to take questions.
Questions from board members? I had a couple. So Dr. Kutaya, on page 2 of 3, after the second bullet where there is no change made to it, the second sentence, approval for any field trip may be revoked at any time by the superintendent or building principal. Is that correct, that a building principal would actually revoke a trip, or would it go up to the assistant superintendent?
So the first level of sign-off goes through the principal, so there's no directly going to Mr. Altieri's office. It goes through the principal, and then there's an instructional supervisor actually that signs off on it to ensure the lack of duplication across trips, and then it goes to Steve's office. So because the principal is in that chain of approval, the principal could unplug.
Okay, all right,
He or she just are not the final say.
gotcha.
Okay.
Okay, and I just wanted to make sure that for out-of-state field trips and foreign travel field trips, it's you're the one who's deciding that? It does say superintendent, so I just want to make sure it's you.
Okay, so yeah, this is me being a little in control of things, right? Like, I don't want kids to travel to other
Well, I
countries
would
without me
prefer that,
knowing,
yeah.
right? And I think, in the past, the assistant superintendent and I have talked about out-of-state travel as well, so I will retain the final approval there, knowing that it'll go through Steve's office.
And then
That makes me scared, like, I just need to know
well, you
where
can
it's
have
at.
two people decide, but as long as somebody else can weigh in
So
on
we-
it, so.
We can, I mean, it can be and/or his designee, his or her designee.
My personal preference would be that, at least for foreign travel, that the superintendent is making the final decision.
Yeah.
So,
Because I'm thinking about Model UN, sometimes we're going to Manhattan. I
Mhm.
don't want Steve to chase me down and say, can we go to New York? Or Rhode Island? So can we propose a friendly amendment to the out-of-state one? The approval of the superintendent of schools or his, her designee?
yes. I would.
And
be okay
then
with
leave
that.
foreign travel alone. Is that okay?
That would be fine with me. And then on page 3 of 3, if you could just look at the bullets and maybe consolidate them. I think there's some duplication between the second and the fourth bullet.
Okay, thank you.
Ms. Zerby?
Page 1, 2, and 3, if the last line there, subject to final approval, was crossed out for the cultural enrichment trips, should it be crossed out for the recreational trips in number 2?
Yes, absolutely. Thanks for that catch.
I do have.
Yes, Ms. Doyle?
What kind of trips are you discussing trip cancellation insurance for? Are you talking out of state, like when it was what? Or out of state or international travel? I mean, if we're going to Stu Leonard's in Norwalk, I don't think we need insurance.
That would be accurate. And probably a trip that we've taken.
Oh, yes, third grade, I went there.
It's mostly trips that require admission fee, so even possibly the museum, the science Center in Hartford, right?
Mhm.
Kids are paying admission ahead of time, et cetera, so I don't know that we're taking insurance out on that, but there's an overnight trip, or we're talking about a group of kids going to Italy. So that's more the higher, further away travel with higher costs.
Can you give me an idea of what kind of activity, fundraising activities are consistent with policies as they are now? Right,
I could tell you some that are not.
that's fine as well.
We, I don't know if I could talk about them off the top of my head, but we have some restrictions on how money is collected, where they can advertise, where fundraisers can and can't take place. That's been a conversation recently. Appropriate venues for fundraisers where there are adults and kids. What bank accounts could be used to deposit monies.
Cash handling procedures,
Right.
the way they collect the money, where it needs to go at the end of the day. There's a whole bunch of different protocols that are in place for that.
We can't do anything that's in competition with the lunch program.
Yes.
Some fundraisers are related to that.
Okay.
So there's a wide range of different types of fundraisers that could exist. Like Dr. Kataya said, there are some that we would, put a stop to, but when they are raising funds, we want to make sure that they're consistent with Milford Public School practices that we're allowing.
And so say a booster club wanted to raise money for a trip, if it's going to Italy or something like that, that is parent fundraisers, are they still regulated by that same, or if it's?
No, so booster clubs and PTOs and PTAs have a different set because they're at arm's length, so it's more about the student fundraisers
Okay.
that we have more controls over in terms of the day-to-day operations of what we will allow and won't allow. Booster clubs typically, have their own separate bank accounts that are separate from ours, and they engage in fundraisers. It still needs approval from us, but they have a different layer of approval than the ones that the students are typically doing throughout the school day.
Okay, thank you.
We do work closely with most and all of them, sometimes on finessing some language or changing some graphics that are more student-friendly, and considering some venues that would be more appropriate for students. So while they do run by their own rules, we have worked with them closely to reconsider and some language and such not, so.
Okay, great. And then the last comment is, same consistency in the first paragraph of the Milford Public Schools district that we've done throughout the other programs. Approve curriculum of the district, so just Milford Public Schools, parentheses, district.
At the end of that first sentence?
Yeah,
First sentence, where's this district?
On page 1. Okay, thank you.
Going back to the cancellation insurance, is the responsibility for obtaining the trip cancellation insurance if they so desire, or are they required to take out trip cancellation insurance? The way I read it was that, if you, the
If
district will
desire.
not be refunding your money. If you
Right.
wanna have that level of security, you need to take out
Right.
the insurance. So, should that be specified, or is it okay the way it is? So parents or guardians are responsible for obtaining trip cancellation insurance if they so desire?
If they so desire, select,
When
choose,
available to,
when available.
because it's not always going to be available.
When so we'll put in language that suggests it's their choice and as available,
Okay.
okay?
and are we providing the vendor for that insurance, or do they have to find it themselves?
It's usually connected to
Trip.
the offer, the company that
Okay,
they're making.
okay, yeah.
I think it's mostly comes into play for the foreign, if they're
Right.
taking for the foreign trip, and, which is usually done through a,
Well, I remember as COVID hit, our kids were supposed to go to Disney and perform.
or something like that, yeah, a longer,
And-
farther away.
They were saying, yes, you can travel, we were saying, no way, they're not traveling, it was as COVID hit. So we got a postponement, and then they said you have to use it by a certain time or lose all your money, and I don't know that insurance was provided at that point. So parents are looking to us, and we're looking to them, and So in that case, it wasn't provided, like, it wasn't an option. It was go or lose, like, you know, like when you book a ticket most of the time. So I think the when available and by choice of the parent is good language to add here. But it also specific that we're not on the hook for refunding.
Right, right. Any other questions? Okay, so this policy will also come back at the September business meeting for adoption. And second reading.
Sorry, we're just confirming something, thank you for your patience. Okay, so let's go to the preliminary report. I think that there is an additional document being handed out. So we'll just wait for everybody to get that. So there's only one difference between the document that was in the packet and this, and that is under the name of each school, it is corrected to say staff for 23-24 as opposed to 22-23. So that's the only difference. If you made notes on your other document, they're the same in number. So I will start by level. At the elementary school, we currently have 2,467 students enrolled. In our budget book, we projected 2,438. So we're a little higher than that. At the middle school, we have 1,182 students enrolled. In our budget book, we projected 1,190. At the high school, we have 1,629 kids enrolled, and in the budget book, we projected 1,646. To give us a total of current enrollment of 5,278 students compared to our projection of 5,274 students. Pretty close,
Yeah,
but it's preliminary. So I will tell you some numbers that are coming in that's catching our eyes. Half Penn, we projected at 245, they're at 260, so a little higher, double-digit increase there. At Orange Avenue, we projected 350, and they're sitting at 367. And at Orchard Hills, we projected 314, and we have 332. Orchard Hills has been consistently increasing in numbers over the last couple of years. The middle school numbers are pretty darn close to our projections, as are the high school numbers. So we're keeping an eye on it. A lot happens over the next couple of weeks. I don't like to share numbers actually until we see the whites of their eyes, but that'll happen in a couple of days. And then we do get a little bit of enrollment registration after Labor Day. So numbers are looking good. Classrooms are ready. We were around today. Lots of excitement. Even pumpkins ready to open. So, any questions about the enrollment report?
Mr. DeYoung?
thank you. I don't want to jump the gun on the facilities report because I know we're likely to see
Good.
that soon. But I'm curious if there is 367 seems like an extremely high number compared to most of the other schools outside of Orchard Hills. So I'm wondering if there is a maximum capacity or what the maximum capacity is for our elementary schools.
I think we're gonna find out.
Yeah, we're gonna find out, and we're actually in the process of doing that right now, as you mentioned, with the facility study. As of right now, we are not maxed out with that number, so we're
Okay.
able to accommodate them. And there's no instance where we couldn't fit that number of students in there, so we are able to do so.
Okay, that's great, thanks.
Other questions? Okay, we'll get updated figures at the October business meeting.
Based on October 1st enrollment, which is the official number that the state looks at, and then we build budgets and such not on October 1st number, so. If there's anything extraordinary, I'll be sure to update the board before then. Okay. And with your permission, board, we'd like to turn things over to Ms. Eileen Fostich as she provides us with our annual food service report.
Good evening.
Hello.
This is the financial report for the entire year for the food service. Once again, we had a successful year. We served almost 700,000 meals this year. That's about 3,800 meals a day. Almost every month of the year, we served all meals free to all students, free of charge, which was awesome. Our participation was excellent. We had, a lot of families and kids took advantage of having free meals for all, both at breakfast and lunch. So, in addition, we also got some support from the government with, we're self-funded. We got most of our income from reimbursements, the federal reimbursements and state support this year. The state, I think through federal funding, took care of the portion that parents would normally pay for meals. And that worked out really well for us. And we also received some money to help us purchase food and supplies that were very expensive this year, as it has been through the pandemic. So some of those supports are gonna continue into next year, but some are going away. So for next year, we're able to serve all students free breakfast. And we're gonna have free meals for those that are eligible for free and reduced price meal. And then parents will go back to, if they don't qualify for free or reduced, they would pay the regular lunch price like they used to. So at the bottom line for this year, we made about almost $400,000, and that's a lot of money for us. But the reason that one of the reasons is because of the higher reimbursements, the higher support, the grants that we received. And it's also, I don't spend money unless I have it, and I'm confident we're gonna continue to have it. So we will be spending some of that money on some equipment that is getting old, things that I replaced when I first started working here in the dark ages. It was new, but I walk around now and it's getting old. So it needs replacing, it's not new anymore. So that's what I saved the money for. So all the money that we earn, we can carry it over in our program, and then we can put it back into the program, whether it's towards equipment or food or supplies, whatever we need. So, and we need a cushion so that we can pay our bills. Like, we were spending $250,000 or $300,000 a month last year. So $400,000 doesn't sound like that much when you need that kind of those kind of funds to pay your bills, pay the payroll, and pay for food and supplies. So we're good this year. I'm happy with the way it ended, and usually you are too, because we are self-supporting. So looking at next year, it's gonna be a little harder. I think participation might fall a little bit because parents that were having their kids purchase meals every day, 5 days a week, they may go back to saying, you can choose 2 or 3 days a week, something like that. But we'll see. It's still a good meal, it's a good nutritional value, and financially it's I think a good deal for parents as well. Some things for next year one thing that's not going away is they're still giving us some supply chain funds. So that'll help our food cost. They're gonna decrease the reimbursement rates that they gave us. They had boosted them up through the pandemic, so we get reimbursed for all meals, whether it's they're all at different levels, whether it's free, reduced, or paid. So they're gonna decrease our paid reimbursement significantly. They had bumped it up to 77 cents a meal, now it's going back down to 40 cents a meal, so that, there are some things that are definitely not gonna move in the right direction for next year that we're gonna have to react to. But I look for, keep my eye open for some grants that we can get. I applied for a $50,000 equipment grant. We did get a grant for using local produce. That's about $8,000. That will encourage us to reach out to local farmers within whatever, Connecticut and outside of Connecticut, but more local. And so those are the grants we've been working on. We also got a smoothie grant for all the schools. So every school's gonna have its own immersion blender, like huge, like industrial strength, not one like what you might have at home. We started
Parsons
using
too?
those.
Parsons too?
No, they had to have been serving breakfast last year for free, so this time. But anyways, we did use them at HQI, so that we were able to teach some of our staff how to use them and test some flavors out on the teachers that attended. So that's what we're doing. Everything we have going on next year is on the website, the prices, how parents can pay, they have to get back into that mode. And we will make it work again next year.
You always do.
Yes, I always do, you're right. So, does anyone have any questions?
I'm just curious, how much is school lunch these days?
These days is, elementary is gonna be $3.35, middle school is $3.60, and high school is $3.85.
Mr. Dion?
I had the same question, but I'm curious how that differs from 2020 or 2019, when the last time we were charging for meals?
It has gone up. I don't have the exact figures, but I can get them for you, but we did increase them for last year, because I don't know if you remember, but we were given some grant money last year, and let me think, it was about $700,000 to be able to support families and continue free meals until it ran out, and it ran out in January. And so parents had to go back to paying in January and February. And so the prices that I have for this year are the same as last year. I didn't increase them from last year, although I know I did increase them from before the pandemic.
Okay. And then I wanted to ask you, you mentioned the grant that you got for local produce. And a couple of times, I think, actually, it's a program, if I'm remembering correctly, was at Mathewson, where they had a farm-to-table competition with the kids and like some sort of Top Chef competition.
Pumpkin.
Oh, was it Pumpkin Delight? Okay. Is that, are you gonna continue to do that program and expand it, or?
I would like to. That was kind of a big thing for us to do. I think it was a nice competition where the kids submitted recipes that we chose and had the kids come in the kitchen and I assigned a staff person with each one. We provided all the ingredients and were able to make enough of that recipe in order to have a taste test the next day with all the entire school. So we made three different recipes and had them kind of samples for everyone that wanted to try. So I would like to do that again, but like for a long time I thought of doing things the same at all the schools, but if I can target one at a time, I can, you can do those kind of things. I don't think I could pull that off system-wide, like same day or anything. But I thought it was really good, and the kids got excited, and my staff got excited working with the kids. It was a really, really good event, I think.
Yeah, it seemed excellent. Thank you.
But I will do that at other schools.
Okay.
So speaking of the grants, you mentioned that you said you had applied for a $50,000
I
grant.
did.
Did you get it, or you're not
They're
sure yet?
reevaluating them in September,
Okay.
so.
And what was that one
hopefully.
for?
What will that pay for? I put in to use it to buy 2 new coolers for each high school on the serving line. I only bought 4 refrigerators on the serving line, $50,000. Used to go farther, $50,000 I guess, but the reason I think I'm gonna get it is because they specifically said it's not limited by need, because a lot of grants go to the most needy,
Right.
and they're the most needy, and we don't meet the threshold usually, but this specifically said it's for, if anyone can apply, so I am hopeful.
So there had been some federal legislation to lower the threshold required by a community to qualify for the community, free and reduced lunch. Did that pass, that legislation?
I am not sure
I
that
know
passed
we
or
missed, we wouldn't have qualified, because I was kind of watching that, and I think we were just slightly over the threshold. I think it was
Yeah.
30% over the threshold, but I wasn't sure if it had even passed or not. I was trying to find out.
That was kind of confusing legislation, because it sounds like, oh, if you meet that threshold, then we can afford to, the government's gonna pay for free meals forever. But what it did, the only thing that does is say, you can apply and you can participate, but you have to come up with the money to support the free meals some other way. It didn't guarantee that you were going to get,
Okay.
you're not gonna get free reimbursements for all meals. They would give you some weighted average, and our weighted average would not cover the cost of
Okay.
everyone to have free meals.
All
So it's a little deceiving. It sounds like a really good idea, but I don't know that it passed, and even if it did, I'm not sure we would want to
Right, okay.
participate.
Thank you for that information. Any other questions? Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. How is staffing and being able to find enough labor and things like that?
This year, it's really good, it's going really well. I actually have had more people apply for jobs than I've had in years. So we have a good long sub list, we filled the jobs, and I'm very pleased.
Any other questions? Thank you, Ms. Faustich.
Ms. Glennon, may I just add one thing
Oh,
about our
yep,
food service department?
sure.
I just wanted to thank Ms. Faustich for her leadership in our food service department. Her and our team work tirelessly to make sure that our students are fed every day, so we really appreciate you. As a former principal, I know just how collaborative her and her team are to help support the needs of the students, so just wanted to thank you for all your hard work and leadership in the department.
Thank you, Mr. Becker.
Ditto, thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Board members will go to the next item under the superintendent's report, handing things over to Ms. Capazna for the talent management and development update.
Thank you. So in my monthly report from the Talent Management and Development Department, you see that we have some job postings, personnel recommendations, retirements, resignations, terminations, and stipend appointments. It's quite a hefty report, as it can be this time of year, but I'm pleased to inform you all that as of 4:30, we hired another teacher today, so we have 49 new teachers, and just 4 openings remain for teaching staff for the 23-24 year. And this is pretty typical numbers, and as Ms. Faustich mentioned, we're also happy with the amount of people, the amount of candidates, the quality of candidates. It's been a busy summer, but unlike last summer when we were scrambling this time, we had to throw a job fair together at the last minute. We haven't had the need to do that. I think we need 3 more paras and 4 more teachers. So, and we're prepared to cover those openings with subs and whatnot in the beginning of the year. And hopefully we'll be able to fill those positions quickly into the new year, early in the new year. We did have, I know the question came up about an art position opening, which we did just fill. And of course, we had a teacher that we had unfortunately had to lay off at the end of June. And we did contact that individual per contract and made that offer for him to come back. But he, fortunately for him, unfortunately for us, had already secured a job over in Trumbull. So he was thankful to get the call, but he won't be rejoining us this year. You never know in the future.
Just to reiterate, the 49 new teachers were to fill openings from others leaving, correct? We're not.
Correct, yes,
49
not brand new,
positions.
yep, that'd be way too many.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mr.
and
Dion?
also, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention that our retirements whatever I reported in June, that number actually stayed the same. We didn't get hit with any July or August or day before school retirements. I mean, it can happen, it has happened in the past, and I was pleased that that really did not happen this year.
Great.
Rare, but yeah.
Mr. DeYoung?
Thank you. I was curious why there's chorus teachers that are being, what the stipend is for the elementary chorus teachers.
Okay, so that was something that was carried over from the end of the year, that we didn't tend to during the school year, that we had to.
But why do we stipend the chorus teachers?
It is for, let's see, when teachers have outside of the school day responsibilities, such as concerts. I think we looked at the number of concerts that they had, and there was some.
It's per contract.
Per contract, yeah, yep.
So the reason that there's not like strings teachers is because that was accounted for previously?
They had already received their stipends. So
Okay.
sometimes when there's late
Yeah.
discoveries of what we, forgot to do or didn't get to,
Sure.
come in towards the end of the year, so.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Other questions from board members? Thank you.
Thank you.
And to finish up the superintendent's report, we'll turn things over to Mr. Brennan for our disbursement.
Thank you, Dr. Kataya, Ms. Glennon, members of the board. So in your package, you'll have a list of all the district's disbursements over the amount of $1,500 for the month of July. Having said that, I'm happy to answer any questions you have with the disbursement report.
Just a note for the board, at our leadership meeting, we gave permission to stop with the yellow highlighting since all that was left was some of the stories, the trailers, so. Any questions from board members? Ms. Doyle?
Thank you. There's a line here for, I know we have to cover all special education costs and evaluations. Are these special ed psych evaluations per student or multiple students within those line items? For example, with Dr. Michael Kaplan, that $22,400.
I can speak to that.
Sure.
So he conducts psychiatric evals for students, and that's for several students. And it just came through at that one time when we got his invoice.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Other questions? Okay, seeing none.
That finalizes my report, Ms. Glennon.
Thank you, Dr. Kataya. We go on to consent agenda. Mr. Fowler?
I make a motion that the Milford Board of Education approves consent agenda item minutes for consideration July 10th, 2023 business meeting as presented.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. DeYoung. Can we have a roll call vote, please?
Adam DeYoung,
Yes.
Catherine Ailing,
Yes.
Megan Doyle,
Yes.
Andrew Fowler,
Yes.
Tracy Irby,
Yes.
Emily McDonough Souza,
Yes.
Gary Pellicetti,
Yes.
Una Petrowski is not here, Cindy Wolf Boynton,
Yes.
Susan Glennon.
Yes.
Motion passes 9-0.
Thank you. Board comment? Any comment from members of the board? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Your second.
Second.
If there are no dissension on adjourning, we'll adjourn at 8:42 p.m. And we'll see everybody in 2 weeks, I think it is.
There you go, we need it.